So you have just found yourself with a flock blocker in your hands. Or maybe you saw one in a store, or you saw an article online. Regardless of why you're here, I'm here to tell you what the flock blocker is, how to use that flocking thing, and some pro tips to ensure some longevity from the application of your flock blocker to help save birds from hitting your windows. So sit back, don't relax, because we're going to use a little elbow grease and a little DIY ingenuity to protect the birds around your home. What is your flock blocker? Well, it is a well-researched template of 2-inch by 2-inch spaced dots. For our friends in the rest of the world, that's 5 centimeters by 5 centimeters. And this well-researched template has historically been used with stickers and decals. However, we have added a little DIY ingenuity using instead a template you can put on as many windows as you need and fill in those dots with marker or paint. And using that simple system, we can reduce bird window collisions by up to 95%. And if you didn't know, window collisions are one of the top 5 killers of birds in North America. So how does that simple dotted grid reduce window collisions by up to 95%? Well, when birds see a reflective surface, oftentimes what they're seeing is the reflection of the sky or the habitat in the background. And so as they're flying towards it, they see open sky or open habitat to seek safety into. And so what these dots do is they break that reflection up, allowing the birds to see that there is something there that they might fly into if they keep on their current trajectory. Using that specific spacing pattern helps us to narrow that gap down, that 2 inches, that narrows it down so that even hummingbirds are a little more hesitant and say, well, that's not a space that I want to try to squeeze through on my way into what I perceive as habitat. And so that dot system, that spacing specifically, helps us to reduce collisions all the way down into our smallest feathered friends, including our hummingbirds. When it comes to selecting your markers, your flock blocker does already come with a white window marker of some style, but your situation may cause you to need a different color. And when you're choosing your color, what you want to consider is not what looks good maybe, but instead what provides the best contrast from the reflection in your glass, in your window. So if you have a dark background in your glass that's being reflected, it's habitat or a dark building, something like that, then you will want to use something like a white marker that came with your flock blocker. However, if you have maybe it's a pass-through appearing window where the birds can see through the window to another window and see habitat on the other side, or you have a very light reflecting background, then you may want to consider a dark colored marker, maybe a black or a dark brown, depending upon what colors you can access. So really the name of the game is contrast. But for most people who are out there using their flock blocker, simple white is going to be enough if you just have a simple reflective surface problem. You know about the color you need to pick for your window. Now, let's talk about what's inside the marker and how it affects how your template is used. So, your flock blocker either came with a small window chalk marker or a slightly larger, more permanent acrylic style marker. There are other options out there we'll talk about as well, but your flock blocker likely came with one of these two. Now, the window chalk marker is great if you need a temporary set of dots. Maybe this isn't a permanent residence and you just need a little something to help while you're there. This is a great solution because this is easy to get off, though, because it's easy to get off, that also means it's easy for weather events to wash off. So snow, rain, what have you, this will not last nearly as long as, say, the more permanent acrylic markers. These will generally last through a lot of weather events. Here at my home, at the Flocking Around Roost, they've lasted for over 5 years without having to be retouched at all. So the more permanent, rain-resistant, water-resistant acrylic markers are a great solution if you need a more permanent style opportunity for these dots, if you need something that's going to last a while. Now, some other options available out there. They do make a window chalk that's it's water resistant spray paint window chalk. This can be a little harder to find. It can be messy. You'd have to be really, really good with it, but it allows you to go very quickly, set up your flock blocker template, spray in all the dots, adjust and move. But again, it can get a little messy. They also make, you probably have seen these out there, these window chalk markers. Make sure you get one if you're going to get these that, again, are the rain resistant if you need something to stand up to weather. What I like about these is with their spongy tips, you can stamp your flock blocker, all of your little dots, very, very quickly instead of having to slowly fill them in with the markers. These other two solutions, they do get, a little higher into the cost side, probably cost as much as the flock blocker itself costs. If you're going to find those, they're great if you have big projects and you need a lot of ink, because they're packed full of paint or ink or whatever you want to call it. So lots of options out there. But again, if you're looking for a more permanent solution, get something that clearly states it's water resistant and or says permanent on it. Now, rarely are any of these fully permanent. Even with the acrylic marker that may have come with your flock blocker, it says permanent on it potentially. You still can get it off with a lot of scrubbing and some sort of window cleaner. You can get these off, or with a nice razor blade or something, you can scrape them off very easily that way. But otherwise, they will last for almost as long as you could hope they would. Before even breaking out your flock blocker to apply to your windows, you got to do the unfun part. You need to clean your windows. So using a cleaning solution or maybe some water, whatever you have at hand, properly clean your windows, then dry them completely to make sure that whatever marker or paint or whatever you're using to mark your flock blocker template, make sure it can properly adhere to the glass in your window. If it's dirty, if it's wet, anything like that can shorten the longevity of your dots if they cannot properly adhere to your window. So make sure to fully clean and dry your windows before starting. Now comes the time where you get to learn how to apply your flock blocker to your window correctly. So first thing you're going to do, you're going to take your flock blocker and you're going to place it up in the top left corner of the external side of your window. That's right, these dots do not go on the internal side of your window. The internal side will not prevent collisions on your glass, so these dots must go on the outside. Once the flock blocker is pushed all the way up to the top left corner of your window, make sure it's flushly pushed up against the left and top edge of your window frame. You do not want to leave a gap between the template and the window edge. Once the flock blocker is in place, fill in the grid with your white window marker or whichever color you're using. There are 9 dots. Make sure to fill in each completely. You may want to leave the flock blocker in place for a moment to let the dots temporarily or partially dry. Then you'll want to move the flock blocker off of the completed dots, but do not slide the flock blocker, as sliding it may cause your dots to smear or smudge, spreading that paint or that marker all over. Once you finished your first grid, lift your flock blocker off the glass, again remembering to not slide the flock blocker. Then place the left edge of the flock blocker against the rightmost edge of the dots in the grid you just completed. This should be the top of the window, so you're moving from left to right. The top of your grid template, the top of your flock blocker, should still be touching the top of that window edge, leaving no gap between the top of the window's glass and the top of the flock blocker itself. So with those dots aligned, the rightmost edge of the dots aligned with the left edge of the flock blocker, fill in your next grid, and again, let it partially dry, and do not slide the flock blocker, but instead pull it away. If you are left-handed, you may want to do this in the reverse order of what I'm saying, instead moving from right to left, though I would still recommend starting at the top and working your way down. After you've completed the first row, then you'll want to move to your next row. Now again, start with the left edge of the flock blocker, touching the leftmost edge of your window, but this time, Place the top edge of your flock blocker against the bottom edge of the dots. Again, remembering we want 2 inches approximately between each of these dots. So with the top of your flock blocker touching the bottom edge of the previous row, you're again using the flock blocker's built-in guides to help ensure that your dots are properly spaced. So left of the flock blocker touches left side of the window, top of the flock blocker should barely touch the bottom of the dots you just finished. Once these are aligned, fill in the dots completely, and then go back to the previous step, following along, using the left edge of the flock blocker to touch the rightmost edge of the dots that you just completed, and use the top edge of the flock blocker along the bottom edge of the dots from the row you just completed. Continue this pattern until each row is filled in completely with the flock blocker template. If you run into a point where your flock blocker template is going to be too large for the space remaining, what you'll do is line the dots of your flock blocker up with whichever dots you have previously finished, allowing for then another set of 1 or 2 columns of dots or rows of dots to be completed. So line the holes up of your flock blocker with the dots you've already completed and continue doing that to fill out whatever gaps you have left. Once your dots have dried, look for any dots that are incomplete or maybe they are too light in at least your perspective, and use your marker to touch them up, go over them. After they dry, you can add another layer and it will help to add more contrast to them. You can use the template to help you do this or just simply freehand, again making sure that your dots are dry first so that you're not smearing any dots with your hand if you're bumping your hand into the glass. After you've finished, make sure that your dots are contrasting nicely with the reflection in your window. And over the course of time, if your dots have started to lose some contrast, they've been washed off, scraped off, rubbed off, you can continually use this flock blocker template for as many windows as you have, for as many reuses as you need. Just make sure to take care of your flock blocker, put it somewhere safe, remember where you put it, and then you can keep using it again and again and again. You can share it with friends and family. You can use it both on your home, your place of work, wherever you can to help protect birds, keep them safe from windows, and make your windows bird friendly. And finally, let's go over some helpful tips that ensure the longevity of the grid you are going to put on or have put on your window to make sure that you're maximizing the use of your flock block. First, let's talk temperature. With your marker, you're going to want to shoot for a temperature when applying the marker between 65 and 85 degrees Fahrenheit. For our friends in the rest of the world, that's 18 to 30 degrees Celsius. Why that range? If it's too cool, you may not get full adhesion from whatever marker or paint system you're using. And if it's too warm, it'll dry so quickly that you may not get complete coverage before things are drying up on you. And if you have any errors and you need to wipe off and start over, it may happen so quickly that you'll have to scrape and start over. So whatever system you're using, try to go in that optimal temperature between 65 and 85 degrees Fahrenheit. And again, that's 18 to 30 degrees Celsius for everywhere else. Your flock blocker may have come with a small window chalk marker that I showed earlier in the video. If it did and you decide you need a more permanent solution, there are plenty of options available for more permanent style markers. Again, if you're going to go that route, find one that it says acrylic, water resistant, maybe it says permanent. And again, don't worry, the permanent is not completely true, as it can still be removed. It's not completely permanent. So you don't have to worry about causing extreme damage to your windows with this. You can remove these dots, whichever material you're choosing. If you go with the window chalk marker with the spongy tip, those can be great and they do have a long life, but with that spongy tip, do remember that if it dries up inside there, it can get crusty and you'll have to wet it to maintain its lifespan so you can keep using it every time you go to apply it to a window. Make sure that you apply your flock blocker grid 4 to 6 hours before any major precipitation events, because if the dots have not completely dried, they may get washed off before they've had a chance to fully adhere to the glass. So give yourself some time. Don't be trying to do this in the middle of a storm. Doesn't matter what type of precipitation event. If it's any type of precipitation, it may wash away whatever dots you put on. I'm going to say precipitation one more time just to show that I can say that word even though I stumbled at the start. And for a final tip, if you're a busy person and you are overwhelmed by the thought of trying to apply this flock blocker grid to all of your windows, here's a way to ease into it. Start with your most problematic window first. That's the window that you know for certain has claimed the lives or caused injuries to birds. So start with that window first. Then go to the next most problematic and work your way to all of your windows that way. But start with the worst to ensure that at least it has slowly started to pull back on its impact to your local birds. So start with the worst and end with the, well, it's not the best, so end with the not worst. I hope you enjoy your flock blocker. I am so happy I could share it with you and I could share how to use it with you. I hope that it protects the birds in your yard, around your home, in your neighborhood, at your place of work, in your city, in your state. Because if we all can just take little steps like this, a simple step like this, we can protect millions of birds every single year.